Okay. Okay. Yep. Okay, we're rolling.
Okay, thank you.
Uh-huh.
Okay, Yazdan, feel free to take it from here. We are live.
Great. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for this webinar where we will be discussing the new service and recycling requirements for Glendale businesses and multifamily properties with 5 or more units. The information we're going over today will be most relevant to owners and managers of Glendale businesses and multifamily properties with 5 or more units. To start things off, I'll do some introductions. My name is Yazdan Emrani. I'm the Director of Public Works at the City of Glendale. Uh, as part of our presenting panel will be Dan Hardgrove, who's the Assistant Director of Public Works at City of Glendale, and Natalie Lessa, who's the co-owner and principal at Recreate Waste Collaborative. After the presentation is done, we're going to have a panel and it will be open to your questions. We're going to do Q&A, questions and answers. And the panelists will be, again, myself, Dan, Natalie, Etienne Ozarak, who's the Integrated Waste Superintendent for City of Glendale, Jack Topalian, who's the General Manager at NASA Services, Mark Tavukchian, who's the General Manager at Waste Resources, Jennifer Silionis, who's the Zero Waste and Organics Manager at Athens, Enrique Vasquez, who's the Transition Manager at Southland Disposal, and Allison Schill, who's the CEO of Carrot App. Now, we're going to go over some housekeeping items. First of all, this webinar is being recorded, and the recording will be posted on City's website and sent to everyone who registered for the webinar on Eventbrite. The webinar is also streaming live on GTV6 and the City's YouTube channel. A link for the YouTube channel live stream is located on the Eventbrite
This meeting is being recorded
at glendalewebinar.eventbrite.com. If you're joining us on Zoom, we encourage you to type your questions into the chat box as we go. We have staff behind the scenes who are monitoring and collecting the questions, and we will respond to your questions during the Q&A session at the end of this hour. If we don't get to your questions during the Q&A, or if you have to leave early, email your questions to us at the following link, which is franchise@glendaleca.gov, and one of our staff will be in touch with you. At this point, we're also going to do a poll to see who is basically joining us for this webinar. So feel free to enter your information on this poll. And that'll give us a good idea of basically who's attending the seminar. And then as far as the agenda for today, we're going to focus on the background. First, we're going to talk about why the city transitioned to a franchise hauler system. We're going to cover regulation changes. And then we're going to move on to what are businesses and multifamily properties of 5 units or more required to do. This includes going over new collection requirements, new education requirements, new food recovery requirements for large food waste generators. And then, as I mentioned, we'll move on to Q&A. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dan Hardgrove, who's going to cover the next section of this presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Yazdan. To start our discussion today, we wanted to first talk about one of the big changes that many of you are already aware of and have experienced based on who is billing you for waste and recycling collection, our city's transition to franchise haulers. We'll be explaining what the term franchise hauler means in later slides, but first let's discuss why the change. Next slide, please. Until December 2021, Glendale had an open permit hauler system. This meant that individual businesses and property owners could choose who they wanted to subscribe with for waste services, as long as they had a city permit. The result of this was over 40 companies providing services to Glendale's businesses and multifamily properties. All of these companies had different ways of doing things with little controls for managing what they were doing and how they were doing it. It was a very inefficient system, and there was no way that such a system could or would be able to meet new state regulations coming down the pipeline. Next slide, please. Until 2012, the most recent major statewide solid waste legislation passed was Integrated Waste Management Act, AB 939, in 1989. There have been three major pieces of legislation that have happened between the time when the City Council last updated rates for hauling services in 2010 and today. The most recent piece of legislation, the Short-Lived Climate Pollutants Act, more commonly known as SB 1383, has the most significant impact on city operations. In the end, the culmination of regulations, topped off by SB 1383, is what required the city to change to a franchise hauler system. Next slide, please. So what is SB 1383? Next slide, please. SB 1383's main goal is to stop sending food and yard waste, also known as organic waste, to our landfills. To do this, the state is requiring all municipalities to require businesses and residents to separate organic waste from trash so that it can be processed as recyclable and diverted from the landfills. And for large generators of food waste, to require establishing a system for donating edible food to food banks. SB 1383 is the most significant solid waste law passed in California since the state mandated recycling 30 years ago, because it influences how we all manage our waste and recycling on a daily basis. Next slide. SB 1383 is also significant because it has had numerous impacts on how cities such as ours approach waste management. The new requirements have made the city's job of solid waste management much more complex and costly. We now have to track the flow of all waste materials carefully, ensure all residents, multifamily properties, and businesses have access to and are subscribing to organic recycling services. Modify our equipment and facilities to accommodate 3 different types of waste streams instead of just 2. This also meant that under the previous system, the activity on our streets would increase because trucks would now be coordinating pickups for 3 waste streams, all of which would be the city's responsibility to manage. Because of this, most cities have been transitioning to a franchise system where the city enters into contracts with specific haulers that are equipped to meet the state's diversion and tracking requirements. The city of Glendale is one of 80 out of 88 cities in Los Angeles County that have enacted a commercial franchise system in response to Senate Bill 1383 and other state regulations. Next slide, please. So why the big focus on organics recycling? Organic waste makes up about 1/3 of the total of what Californians send to landfills. It is also estimated that 20% of food that is thrown away is still edible. This is problematic because when organic waste decomposes in landfills, it produces methane gas, which is very damaging greenhouse gas and contributes to climate change. It is also a wasteful use of resources because the food we send to the landfills should go instead to feeding people or recycled in the form of compost, mulch, biofuel, and natural gas. So let's talk about the franchise system in Glendale. Following the new state regulations, the city realizes we needed to change our system in order to abide by the state law. In 2017, the year after SB 1383 was passed, the city started conversations with the public about the issue, and in 2019 began the process of selecting new haulers that would ensure the city meets state requirements. The selection process was completed last fall, with contracts finalized in September, and the process of transitioning to the new commercial franchise haulers beginning in December 2021. The final phase of the transition happened last month, February 2022, as the commercial accounts previously serviced by all permitted haulers were transferred to franchised haulers. Next slide, please. We now have 4 exclusive franchise haulers serving our city, designated into 4 zones. Here are the haulers on the map, and here are their zones. If you're not sure which zone you fall under, you could search your address on our interactive map at glendaleca.gov/hauler. In fact, if you want more details on anything we are discussing here today, both the city's website as well as our haulers' websites have a great deal of information. Please make a note of the links identified at the bottom of the presentation slides today. Next slide, please. There are many benefits to our new franchise system. It reduces congestion on city streets. It minimizes the number of trucks needed to service all 3 waste streams. It ensures compliance with state diversion requirements without increasing the city's collection infrastructure. Next slide, please. The new franchise system also gives us more control over the rates customers are and will be paying. The contracts with all 4 haulers have the same rate structure, including extra service fees, that are locked in over the next 10 years with strict provisions for any increases, which are only allowed consistent with if there is a CPI or cost of living increase. This is important because we know that costs will continue to rise as factors like landfill closures come into play. We all now have more consistency in terms of the rates we are paying across the board, meaning if you move from zone to zone in the city, the rates remain the same. Next slide, please. The city is committed to ensuring that rates stay low, relatively speaking. Currently, Glendale's commercial franchise rates remain lower than most of LA County, and further increases will be controlled under new franchise contracts in place. The city also removed the refuse fee, or rubbish fee, previously charged to commercial accounts on your Glendale water and power bill, which offsets rate increases. As commercial franchise customers, you have further ways to help lower your rates. Because recycling rates are lower than trash rates in Glendale, you could see savings in your fees by recycling more and sending less trash to the landfills, by downsizing your trash bin size and frequency of service. Our franchise haulers are available to their Glendale customers to provide free site visits, assess their individual waste collection needs, and right-size their containers and service schedules. So, how does SB 1383 affect you? Next slide. Firstly, businesses and multifamily properties are required to subscribe to organic recycling service with your hauler by April 1st of this year. Next slide. Waivers for business and multifamily properties that may have clear space limitations, or for businesses that produce low volumes of waste as defined by state guidelines. There is a waiver application, site assessment, and review process available through the city. More information on waivers and waiver requirements are available at the website link noted on the screen. Next slide, please. There is also a new standardized state-required container color and labeling system. Businesses and multifamily properties are required to provide clearly labeled, color-coded waste bins and containers in all indoor and outdoor areas of their property where waste containers are available for tenants, employees, or customers. The color coding is as follows. Recycling goes in bins with blue lids or coloring. Organics goes in bins with green lids or coloring. And trash or refuse goes in bins with black lids or coloring. Your hauler will use the same color coding and labeling on their main collection bins and carts provided for their service. Education is a key component and requirement of SB 13 program as well. As part of the new program, every year, employees, tenants, contractors, and customers must be provided with educational material about what belongs in each container. New tenants must be provided with information before or within 14 days of move-in. Resources to help you meet these educational requirements, such as flyers, posters, and tenant letters, can be found on the city's website and from your haulers. For organic disposal, food waste must be disposed of in bags that are clear or see-through. Recyclables must be clean, dry, and disposed of in the recycling containers loosely. I will now be turning the presentation over to Natalie Lessa from Recreate Waste Collaborative, who will be sharing a bit about the edible food recovery portion of this program.
Thanks, Dan. Can I get a thumbs up if everyone can hear me okay? Great. So as Dan mentioned, there is another component to SB 1383. You've just heard about the organic waste recovery requirements of Senate Bill 1383. And now we'll go over the edible food requirements, which addresses the state of California's goal of diverting 20% of edible food generated by the year 2025. Before we jump in, let's define edible food. Edible food is food that is intended for people to eat. It is not organic waste or food scraps that wouldn't be fit for consumption. This may include prepared food, packaged food, and produce. The state requires that Tier 1 and Tier 2 businesses participate in food recovery through the donation and redistribution of food to feed people within the community. Businesses must donate the maximum amount of recoverable edible food that is currently being generated within the facility. They may do so by contracting with a food recovery organization or service and must maintain records of that agreement. They must also include record-keeping requirements such as contact information and donation information, like the types of food donated and the quantity in pounds. Tier 1 and Tier 2 generators must keep these records on file to demonstrate compliance with the edible food component of Senate Bill 1383. Next slide, please. As of January 1st, 2022, the state of California requires that Tier 1 businesses adhere to these requirements. You can see here what's listed as a Tier 1 business. Those would be supermarkets with an annual sale of over $2 million, grocery stores and supermarkets with a facility size of over 10,000 square feet, food service providers, food distributors, and wholesale food vendors. By January 1st, 2024, Tier 2 businesses are required to comply with the requirements. You can see the longer list of Tier 2 businesses, restaurants with 250 seats or more or over 5,000 square feet, large hotels, health facilities with food on site and over 100 beds. We have large venues, large events, state agencies, local education agencies, and other non-local entities. And there are some unique businesses like banquet halls that might be considered a restaurant, same as caterers. And if you have questions on this, we're happy to answer whether or not your business might fall into one of these categories. Nothing limits a business from donating food. These are just the requirements that have been set by the state of California. Next slide, please. So the City of Glendale has contracted with Recreate Waste Collaborative to provide assistance to Tier 1 and Tier 2 businesses. At Recreate, we're working with businesses across the state to establish food recovery programs. And we have partnered with Carrot to offer Glendale businesses the support needed in understanding the edible food donation requirements of SB 1383. Carrot is a free app with a tracking system to support businesses with their food donations by easily connecting businesses that are donating food to food recipients, while also providing the tracking and reporting requirements that we've previously discussed. Next slide, please. This slide shows more information about the Carrot app that will be available to all businesses within the City of Glendale and is intended to make it simple, straightforward, and safe for businesses to donate food to food recipients. Carrot can help businesses to post food donations, create auto-generated contracts, and maintain records. Our outreach team will be out in the community helping businesses to get set up with the free Carrot account and can offer training to employees. You may also attend an upcoming Carrot training to better understand how the app might be able to help your business comply. The next training will be held on March 16th at 9:00 a.m. and will be a virtual training that you can find the link to in the chat. Next slide, please. One common question that we receive often is whether or not edible food can be donated and if businesses are protected. We are here to assure you that there are numerous laws in place that protect businesses from edible food donations. And those are listed here. Those are the California Good Samaritan Food Donation Act. And LA County health inspectors will also be promoting the safety and legality of those donations within the community over the year. Next slide.
Program enforcement is an important part of 1383, SB 1383. SB 1383 does have teeth, and the state requires cities to enforce these regulations because the city is ultimately responsible for compliance and could be subject to penalties. We need everyone's participation and cooperation to get there. On the city's end, we will be conducting routine inspections to verify that businesses and multifamily property owners are participating in organics recycling of generated waste materials, and also to check for contamination. The goal is not to be punitive, but to educate and to get businesses and property owners into compliance. If we find people who are not in compliance, we will provide educational information and a notice to comply. However, on an escalating and progressive basis, if the notices of violation are not remedied, they are subject to administrative civil penalties, which includes fines. With that, I'm turning it back over to Michelle to help with the questions.
Thanks, Dan. Okay, so we're going to move into the Q&A segment now. On the screen here, you'll see our full list of panelists, as well as contact information where you can contact your haulers directly if you have specific questions about the services that you're receiving from them. If we don't answer your questions today, please email franchise@glendaleca.gov, and somebody from the city team will get back to you and respond to your email. So the first question, I'm just going to stop sharing the screen real quick, pull it up. Okay. So the first question we received today is, can we use the same plastic bin liner for organics recycling that we use for trash? And Yazdan, I'll pass it over to you to answer that question.
Thank you for that. I will ask Dan Hartgrove to answer that question.
The answer is yes. You can use the bag liners. We do ask that you use clear or translucent bags. This helps in the processing of the food waste once it reaches the processor. So you putting the food waste into a clear plastic bag and placing it into the proper organics container.
Okay, thanks, Dan. Let's see, another question we got. Can you tell us a bit more about the requirements for businesses to educate their employees? Are there resources for this?
So we have flyers that we've developed with the franchise haulers that are available on our website and on their websites. These include things such as where to put different items. They also include information about the labeling for the different containers, and all of these are available on the city's website as well as on the franchise haulers website.
Okay. Next question. This is related to program enforcement, I believe. How often will these routine inspections happen, and how much will the fines be?
I'm going to ask Etienne Ozarek to answer that question.
Under SB 1383, we're required to do a survey of contamination. And so over the course of a year, you are likely to be inspected.
Okay, thanks, Etienne. Let's see, another question. Will businesses be fined if they don't subscribe to organics recycling?
Go ahead, Etienne. And also, can you talk about the other question? The previous question also asked about how much will the fines be?
The fines are on an escalating rate. They begin at 100 for the first violation, 200 for the second, 500 for the third, and 1,000 for the fourth.
Okay, thanks, Etienne.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, how do Glendale rates compare to other cities within LA County?
So, as was mentioned during the presentation, we went through a process to get to where we are, and based on our survey of other cities, we have one of the lowest rates in LA County. In fact, we're in the we rank 34th lowest, or the bottom 50%, when compared to the rates throughout the county's 88 cities. We're not the highest, we're not the lowest, but we are in the lower portion in terms of the rates.
Okay, thank you, Yazdan. Let's see, I don't see any more questions in the chat. Let's see. I believe, Allison, you just sent a message about will there be fines? I believe we did answer that about what happens if a business does not sign up for organics. Thanks for flagging that. If anybody has any more questions, please send them over the chat. Otherwise, we'll go ahead and share a link to the survey in the chat. We are asking everybody who attended today to please give us feedback on this webinar. Want to know what you thought, if you found it helpful, and if you would like to see more content like this from the city. Aaron in the chat just sent the link to the survey. We'd really appreciate your feedback. And everybody who registered for the webinar will receive a recording, a link to the recording over email. That should come by the end of the week. So keep an eye out for that. And I am not seeing any more questions come in through the chat. So I think, oh, I see. Okay, another question just came in. Who is doing bulk pickup for apartments?
So the bulky items pickups are handled by the franchise haulers, and you have to, if you're in an apartment complex, then you would need to schedule that through the property manager for the apartment that you are located in.
Great. Yeah, so contact your hauler directly. If you have questions about that, please refer to the email addresses here on the screen. And if you need to confirm who your hauler is, we do have that interactive map on the glendaleca.gov/hauler website, where you can type in your address and confirm who your hauler is. Okay. All right, I'm not seeing any more questions. Oh, one more question just came in, spoke too soon. Are there charges for bulk pickup?
So each apartment complex basically has 4 free pickups per year, and then anything above and beyond that has to be done through, again, the property manager. There are charges for that for more than 4 pickups per year, and again, that would be handled through the property manager. So I would encourage you to contact your property manager for additional information on those additional charges, or you can contact the haulers. But again, the first step should be through your property manager at your apartment complex.
Thanks, Yazdan. Okay, I'm gonna wait 5 seconds because I keep on speaking too soon and saying that the questions are done, and then I see one come in. Let's see. All right. No more questions coming in. So I think that we can end the webinar. And once again, thank you in advance for giving us feedback on this webinar through the link in the chat. We'd really appreciate your thoughts and what you'd like to see more of next time around. With that, I believe we can close. Thank you all for attending today and have a lovely rest of your day. Thank you.